Welcome back, McFly subscribers. So this is what we're tying today. It's called an Amy's ant. So this kind of is loosely based off of a Chernobyl ant, and it's a really high floating foam fly that looks really good. So this can mimic a hopper, any kind of terrestrial, but mainly I believe it's kind of originally tied to look like a stonefly. You can tie in a bunch of different colors. Today I've got olive body, gold, and brown foam. All right, so let's place the hook securely in the vise. And today we're using Risen's Streamer 300, and I'm using size 8. Now you might ask, why a streamer hook? Well, this is a heavy foam fly, so it's going to hold this streamer hook up, which is going to give us a little more strength because these streamer hooks are stronger. Being a little heavier wire, it is heavier, but it is going to be a little bit stronger. And the thread I'm using today is Vivus 10-aught in brown. Use whatever color you want. But the reason why I'm using 10-aught is because it's a flat thread, and you kind of want that when tying in foam. So you could start right at the head of the fly there, the hook eye, but you don't really have to. I'm a little bit ways down, and that's okay. So we're just building a thread base here. Doesn't have to be a perfect wrap. You can see I'm not perfect on there because that's all going to get covered up anyway. Next, we take some foam, a strip of foam like this, and you want some longer scissors, and we're going to cut a strip that is about the hook, the width of the hook gap. And there we go. You can see roughly around the width of the hook gap. So it's just an even strip like so. Next, while we're at it, let's line that up with the dark foam. Cut a little notch to measure. Do the same thing on the other side. A little notch to measure. Now we can line those scissors up and get one very even cut. And there we go. We got two strips pretty much the same width. Next, we're going to take the end of the gold foam or whatever color you're going to use on the bottom. We're going to cut a notch in it like so. I always like to fix those corners. There we go. Now we're just going to put a little dab of super glue there just to hold it. Make sure this doesn't spin. I'm going to rest this right on top, right in the center. So as you can see, it's right in the center. And we're leaving about a hook gap length off the back. And you can see I've got this turned a little towards me because when I wrap this in, it's going to want to rotate a little bit around the hook. And so that's just going to ensure that that gets tied in straight. And all we're doing is getting a little tail end like so. Make a couple wraps to really lock that in there. Make sure it's nice and straight and evenly tied. And then we can pull that back and we'll wrap all the way up, just spiral wrap all the way up to the tip. And I go up to the hook eye and then back one wrap. We'll do one more little tiny dot of super glue at the head. I'm going to pull this forward and rest that right on top in the center. Again, angle this a little bit towards me, towards you, and then wrap that in. That's going to rotate it down into the hook properly so it's sitting straight on top. Now we're going to just spiral wrap all this all the way down and come back to the tail. Right up here we've got a lot of length here. I don't need all that. We're just going to knock that off. Okay, and we'll clean that up later. Now for the brown foam, we cut a little notch in it. Like so. And we want this tied in so it is right up against the back of the tail. So that way a little piece of that foam tail is sticking out. We're going to set this on top. Again, rotate a little towards you. And then try to make an even wrap over top of that. I'm going to make 3 or 4 wraps. And then we're going to make sure that that's sitting directly on top. Like so. Now I come over like this and I make one more wrap to leave a little gap right there. And that's for the rubber legs to keep them from splaying out too much. So traditionally I believe these are tied with a solid color rubber leg, but today I'm going to use this speckled brown. I think it'll look really nice. Then we're going to double this up like so, and we're going to tie it right in the center of that doubled up piece. Just like that. And then we can clip off the doubled up, and now we've got two sides of legs. Now you can see that this is pinched, which is why I created a little bit of a space. You can create more if you need, but it's always going to do that. And we've got a way to fix that a little later. But anytime you tie in rubber legs really tight, they want to kind of come together like that. We'll be able to fix that in a little bit. Pull everything rearward, and then we're just going to wrap a couple times right in front. We're going to leave our thread right at the base there. Now this all gets in the way, and it's kind of a pain. So what I do is I pull it all back. I've got this little piece of wire, and I just wrap the wire over everything, and that's going to hold it back so it's out of my way, like so. Next, you want a piece of hackle. Just any hackle really will do. I'm going to use a brown. You can use whatever color you want. You really actually don't want a super fine hackle because we're going to trim this down, and you kind of want it trimmed down. That's the pattern. That's how it works. But I just separate the tip off of the hackle like so. Don't use your high-end dry fly hackle. Go with something a little less expensive. Now I got this cactus chenille. I'm gonna expose the core of it by ripping off some of the fibers, and we will tie that core down like so. Of course, make sure you're wrapping over the tip of the hackle, which kind of rotated around, and there we go. So that's tied in, and then we're going to bring our thread all the way back up, but not actually all the way. So we're going to stop right about there. This is going to be the size of the head, and you can come up just a little bit more if you want, but you really want to leave a couple, maybe 2 hook gaps, hook and a half gap, hook gap and a half or so. So now we can start wrapping this chenille, and you don't need this super tightly wrapped. You're just basically covering up that thread and the foam. That's all you need. So we're going to capture that with a couple wraps. We'll get in super tight with these fine point scissors and cut that off. By the way, these are Risen's mitten scissors. I love them. I use them in so many flies. They are a super fine tip. Now when cutting really heavy duty stuff, you want something a little heavier of a tip. You don't want to bend these, but they're strong, so they shouldn't bend on most stuff. But you know, they're great for getting in real close and cutting materials off. Now we got the body done. Let's go ahead and start wrapping the hackle. So you want this open spiral wrap. Let's capture that. And watch how close we can get this with these scissors. And now we can trim this hackle. So I've got these, they're a little bit longer, they're like hair scissors. I cut the very top off really close as I can get. Be careful not to cut any of your rubber legs or foam or anything like that. So coming back here, kind of go sideways on it, not this way, because you could cut that foam. So just be careful. All right, but then once you come along the side and start cutting, and the bottom, you want to be careful not to cut too deep, because you want to leave a little bit of that hackle. You can see we've got kind of like a scruffy bottom, and that's what you want. That's the fly. So it's kind of a weird way to do it, but you know, it's nice because you get to use some hackle that, you know, doesn't cost as much money. Use some of the pieces of hackle that you don't like a whole lot for your dry flies. There we go. So we can undo that wire now. And it does kind of compress that foam, but over time that foam will Come back out. We're going to stretch this tight, okay? And we want to make sure it's directly on top. Of course, when we go to tie it in, we want to kind of come back a little bit because that thread is going to want to rotate. And then we will tie that in so it's directly on top. So there's 2 wraps. Go ahead and look at it, make sure it's even on top. Adjust anything that needs adjusting. I think that looks pretty good. So now we're just gonna wrap up to right at the base of where you tied in the other foam. I'm gonna push this forward. And we're gonna make a wrap over, like so. Make sure that's directly on top again. Nothing's twisted. And then we can come back through and compress that foam a little bit. So next, the Underwing is Crystal Flash. I like pearl. You could use, I think normally it's a rainbow colored. I like the pearl. I think it looks really good, but up to you. You can use whatever color you want. So the way I tie this in, I got 5 or 6 strands, and you want them back quite a ways. We're going to cut that down a little bit. You make a couple wraps there, pull this out, and then wrap over it. Bring it up forward, you know, and then we can bring this back and wrap it back down, and that makes a really secure tie-in. We bring it all the way back to that base there, and now we've got Crystal Flash wing. I guess you would call that an underwing. You just want to leave yourself enough room so it's sticking out past the back, you know, quite a ways. That's good right there. Next, we've got a patch of deer hair here. I believe normally it's elk. Deer hair works. What really works well is the stimulator deer hair because it's a little finer, but this will work too. You don't need a big patch of this. I'll show you how much it is. People talk about measuring in pencil width. I don't find that super useful. So there we go. That's how much I got. It's not a huge piece. I noticed that I tie too much in, it ends up not working, but we want to comb this out. Get all that under fur out, any of the shorter fibers, clean that up. Now we're going to stick it in our stacker and go ahead and give it a stack. Now you don't want to go too short with this, so I find that I like this to extend out almost to the end of the foam, maybe to the inside part of that notch. Okay, so we're going to transfer that measurement to our other hand. Now you could cut this off and tie this in, but I like to go ahead and just tie it in like so. We're going to keep that pinched with our fingers. We're just going to wind all the way up so we individually wrap those fibers, and that will actually be a lot more durable. Now I like to, before I let go, just kind of knock some of these off like so. And we'll clean that up in a minute. But there we go. There's the wing. Let's use our fine point scissors because I want to really clean this up really well. All right. Now I'm going to wrap over that a little bit. Come up over that wing, make a little wrap like that. Don't go too tight or it'll flare it a lot, but we will fix that flare in just a second. But we are going to bring our thread back to right there, right in front of that wing. Next, I've got this Solarez bone dry, and I find that this wing tends to flare a lot, especially sitting on the other side of that foam. So we're going to fix that. So we're going to come in, we're going to stroke this back, make sure it's sitting properly. We can look at it at all angles, make sure it's good. And that bone dry comes with this really nice little handy paintbrush. So we're just going to paint right over that, right there. We're going to keep that pinched. And then we're going to take our curing light, we'll cure that, and look at that. That sits it down nice and flat. Now that's a little too flat, but in a minute that will end up breaking up a little bit. You could break it up by separating it, however you want to do it. But you can see that's slowly kind of releasing those a little bit, but that kind of keeps that locked down right there. Now we can pull back the underwing, and I like to clip it so it's just right past that tail right there. I've got this Antron dubbing, and I'm going to use this olive color just to kind of match the body. Use whatever colors you want. We're going to form a pretty hefty little head here. Definitely want to cover everything. We want to definitely build some bulk as well. Let's go a little bit more. There, that's all covered. We're going to get one more pinch here. And we are going to end with that thread right behind that wing. We bring the darker color, the top foam piece, up and over. We want to make sure it's sitting nicely on top. And then we want to make one wrap, and a second we can pinch and pull down, and that's going to lock that in, sitting directly right on top. And we can adjust if we need, but you can see that's looking pretty straight on top. Now it's time for the second pair of legs. So we're going to do the same trick. We're going to double this over. We will make 2 light wraps directly on top. Cut off the top. Pull this down and over. Do the same thing here, down and over. Make sure it's looking good on both sides. And we are done with the tying portion, so let's go ahead and whip finish. Now, usually I would use a whip finisher, but there's a lot of stuff around the head here, so I find hand whip finishing is really helpful here. So if you can do it, hand whip finish, 4 or 5 turn whip finish. If you can't, just be careful. All right, so we're gonna tighten that. I usually cut it off with a little bit of a tag in. I don't want to get super tight. I just want to make sure that stays. You can see how that wing did flare out a little bit more. Now while we're at it, we'll go ahead and cut this, and the length is up to you. You could have a long back, you could have a really short back, kind of like the medium size. So basically I'm coming back, and if you look, it's right at the base of where this back ends, right? So at the start of the tail. That's roughly where I'm cutting. Maybe a little less. Get that as straight as possible. And you could leave it like that, but we're going to get fancy here. We're going to cut a little notch in it. There we go. That looks pretty good. You can get a little shorter than that if you want. Up to you. I think I will. There we go. I think that looks good. It's your fly. You do with it what you want. Then the front here, we just keep a little tab on the front, like so. And then we can just knock off the corners. Now these rubber legs, as I said, we can fix this. I don't like that they're super kind of crunched together. I want them spread out a little bit more. So I have a little trick. Take your UV light, keep that close, get a little bit of that Solares bone dry. You come in and you just wipe in the center of those legs, like so. Face this downward in your chest and hold it with your mouth. And I can't talk, but what we're gonna, because the light's in my mouth, we're gonna separate these. Then I'm gonna use my head and lift up, so that way the light shines right on the legs. And you can see that separated them a little bit more. Now, I was talking a lot. let's do that once more. The front part did, but not the back, so let's try one more time. This time I'm just going to hold the back. Okay, so that's a curved piece, that's why. It'll be fine. Do the same thing here. There we go. So that's spread those out quite a bit more. Well, let's get that front part a little bit more. There we go. Look at that. Now we can knock these legs down, make them a little bit shorter. I like the front legs to be right about where that is. Now that, some reason the UV resin did something funky to the legs. That's okay. I've never had that happen before, honestly. But over time, that will wear itself off. I bet you I stretched it too much when I was doing it. That's probably what I did. You don't want to stretch them really hard. All right, so we're going to knock all these down. Be roughly the same length, like so. And then I like taking the UV resin, so I like this to be super durable. So I'm gonna paint right where the end of the whip finish was there. I'm also going to paint a little bit right up on the top here. That's gonna keep that from spinning. We're gonna paint a little bit right there. And we already got back there, so let's get right at the base, like so. And that's going to keep everything from spinning on you as much. The UV resin really is good stuff. There is the finished Amy's ant. I found a very pretty pattern, so I think this definitely looks a lot better than your normal Chernobyl ant. I mean, the Chernobyl ant is pretty simple. This at least has some extra stuff in it. Looks kind of cool. It's a little more difficult to tie, there's no question, but it's good to have a couple in your box. And if the fish are finicky and they're not biting the Chernobyl, throw one of these on, see if you can entice them a little bit more. It definitely has more buggy look to it, something that might get them to go for it. So I really like it. Let me know what you guys think. I've fished this many times before. I never got into tying it because it is a little more complicated, as you can see. It's really not that hard though once you get used to it. It's just a lot of steps. Definitely give it a try. Also, let me know in the comment section what you think of how I tied this. Any changes you would make to it. Tell me your fish stories. I'd love to hear them. Now, one thing I also want to mention with this is that wing. You want to make sure that wing is long enough because, and also you don't want to over bulk the wing. There's one that's way over bulked, you can see. And also that wing is a little too short. What happens is that tail becomes too exposed, I think. I really like to have this way back behind there. It brings it all together. Instead, it almost looks like two bugs kind of mating or something, which could work. So definitely you could use that the way it is. You can see that the wing here is a little bit long. I like this one a little bit shorter personally with the way it looks. By the way, if you guys haven't already, check out my sponsor, Fly. They made the scissors and of course the hooks that I used today. They also sell fly rods and reels and fly line and a whole bunch of stuff. A lot of really high quality gear at really good prices. So definitely check them out. Go to www.risenfly.com. And best of all, they're offering all of you guys a discount. So if you're my subscriber, just go there, type in McFly at checkout, and you'll get 15% off your first order with them. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. If you guys like this kind of content, please subscribe and hit that bell notification for future video updates. Also, if you could hit the like button, it would really help me and the channel out. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.